afternoon and welcome to this live interview with Diana Leemon, who's joining me today. She's a researcher scientist with Queensland Department of Agriculture and also a member of the Honeybee and Pollination Advisory Panel of AgriFutures. She's here today at the Evoke Ag Expo here at Melbourne at the exhibition buildings. And Diana, thank you for making the time to come and chat with me today. I really appreciate your time.
Not a problem.
So can you tell me a little bit about the Evoke conference that you're here attending?
Okay, Evoke is a concept of AgriFutures. AgriFutures is a fairly new organisation, but it's an evolution of something called the Rural Industries Research and Development Corporation. It's evolved into AgriFutures, but with a bigger footprint where they really want to take agriculture into the 21st century. And so this serves as a lot of the levied industries, and the honeybee industry is one of the levied industries where levies are paid by producers, and then the federal government does some matching, and then research dollars are then handed out. But AgriFutures does more than that, because they're now really trying to, they do Rural Women Awards, they do promote young students, they have young student ambassadors, awards for that. So it's quite big, and they've taken the initiative that this Evoke is about where agriculture is going into the 21st century, the later 21st century. So they brought people here, some who are, Israel, some people from Israel who are doing absolutely amazing stuff where they're growing collagen in plants.
Wow. And
collagen, which is being used in body parts, not body parts, but used even in collagen injections and collagen used for wound treatments. But it's not collagen from animals that can have some antigenic effects. This has none, because it's been put into plants. So that's just one example, and also some amazing monitoring technology. So as a panel member of AgriFutures, they wanted us to all attend, so we get to network with the other panel members, we get to see what's happening in the whole ag tech space and where we're going. And I think it's a very valuable experience. Plus, the next 2 days, we, as the Honeybee and Pollination Panel, R&D panel, we will be spending the time developing our new strategic plan for where research will be going in the next 5 years.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah, because that's our primary role is, as panel members, we develop the research plan in association, in consultation with industry.
Yep.
And we also then, when researchers want to carry out a research project, they submit it to us, but we assess it for scientific rigour and risk. Obviously, we have only a very small pot of money, so we're very careful about how we invest that money, because we want to know we've got pretty good guaranteed returns for industry, so we will fund things which are going to have a biggest impact for industry. And it's an interesting situation with our small bucket, because the beekeeping industry is probably reasonably unique in that we think over 25,000 amateur beekeepers, which are lovely women beekeepers, are a growing group. But of those...
That's national?
Yes, and nationally over 25,000. But the number of people classed as commercial is under 1,000.
Wow.
And those who actually contribute to the levy are even smaller. Now, the levy is only collected when honey is passed through the packers.
Yes.
So it's a number of cents per kilo that the packers collect on behalf of the beekeepers, and of that money, some of it goes to a biosecurity readiness. So if there was an incursion of varroa mite, then that money is the emergency, it's already been put aside for an emergency response. But then we get down to, I think it comes down to maybe 2.5 cents out of this. It's only about 4.6 cents in the kilo, I think. I might be wrong in the thing, but it's only about 2.5 cents in the kilo then goes towards R&D, and the government matches some of that money. So
your resource pool for funding sounds like it's fairly small.
It's very small, and the interesting thing is it's probably highly effective, because a lot of our research is done on pests and diseases, nutrition, a lot of activities, a lot of things which are also relevant to beekeepers all over the country, whether hobbyists or not.
Yes.
And so our research is very effective, but it's only been funded by a very small number of people. And it's interesting when I go to, because I belong to an amateur club up in Brisbane, and often, when I know small hive beetle, which is probably my destiny.
Yes, we will talk about that shortly.
I know that people in the early days would say, well, why is isn't the government doing more? Why aren't people doing more? Well, government isn't really in direct research funding now. I am as a scientist in the Department of Agriculture, we do research with external funds, which are really co-funding our positions in the department. So we can only do research in external funds. The honeybee program doesn't really have a lot of external funds, doesn't have a big pot of money. But the amateur people in this country, and I didn't know this until I got onto the panel, there's no current mechanism to feed in contributions from all the amateur beekeepers.
That's right.
And our amateur beekeepers are becoming very informed and very active and proactive about bees.
Well, your research also benefits them.
Yeah, and so I think it's really interesting that the Wheen Bee Foundation has been set up recently.
Yes.
Because the Wheen Bee Foundation is, I see, as a mechanism that we can start to tap into the goodwill of the community about bees, plus also we can tap into, it can become an avenue in which a lot of the amateur beekeepers and the small, and the people who might even have up to 50 or 100 hives,
the sideliners,
the people who aren't putting it through the big packers, they can actually contribute towards R&D by donating money to the Wheen Bee Foundation, who can then funnel it to AgriFutures to get that government offset.
Yes, and I think you're absolutely right. And this is a conversation that I have with a lot of people, and it's something that I'm particularly aware of, and others are aware of about this. It's just the way the legislation was set up originally.
Yeah, any levied industry, it requires an act of parliament, and it's a very, like anything, it has to be a very strict process. And so, and I suppose you can see why it is, but and I suppose it's just that we're a unique industry in that we now have a lot of amateurs, and we're really growing, and it's an important growth. But I see that even the biosecurity manuals that get handed out, they all come from our levy money.
Oh, really?
Yes, all of that and all the putting together, because we actually fund money to Plant Health Australia to help write those things.
Really? That's very interesting to know. Okay. Okay. Now I have to go back just a step or two, and you are a beekeeper yourself.
I'm a beekeeper.
And
I wouldn't say I'm the best beekeeper in the world, but anyway.
And your girls are based up in Queensland, where you live?
Queensland, in west of Brisbane. Small Hive Beetle Central. Small Hive Beetle Alley.
Oh, okay. Yes, we hear quite a bit about small hive beetle, and in Victoria, yes, we are also affected by it. But with my limited understanding of small hive beetle, that I believe that there's certain weather conditions that can cause.
And I think we're learning on this. Small hive beetle is actually my destiny. It's not my. It's never my prime area of research. My actual real area of research that I've been employed in the last 19 years is I work in biological control.
Oh,
I use fungal diseases of insects to kill them rather than chemicals, and I learn how to grow up, find the right fungus, grow up the spores, formulate them, and then you apply them the way you would an insecticide.
Interesting.
So that's my main area. But small hive beetle, when it first turned up in Queensland, right back in about 2002, I worked for the government then, and somebody needed to get a photograph to put out an alert. And at the time they couldn't find the person who did the normal photography. They knew I had a camera on my microscope. I got to photograph the one that first went out. Little did I know that this would become my destiny. And then, of course, I was a beekeeper at the time, although it's probably far worse than I am now, so that's really saying something.
So when did you start to notice that the small hive beetle was affecting your personal hives?
Well, it was about 2004, I think it was. I went to an apiary field day that was held at the research station where I work. And some great apiary officers up in Queensland, Peter Warhurst and Hamish Lamb, were doing this field day, and they started talking about small hive beetle, and because it was starting to make itself noticed in certain areas. And at the time when I was at this, I thought, oh gee, I work in biocontrol. And I went away and did what the scientist does when you hear a problem. You actually go and start doing literature search. And I found that people had actually been testing this fungus that I work with on the beetles, and they'd had a bit of success. So I said to Peter, could you give me a few of these beetle larvae? And of course he can always access where there are any diseases. He gave me this great pile of smelly, rotten, horrible stuff.
He gave
me a slime out from his own hives. He gave me a slime out, and from that I had a great technician working with me, who was a great entomologist. She got the colony going, and so we just started developing ways of testing it.
Wow.
And as we found we were able to infect them. So I then spoke to the Queensland beekeepers, and they got very excited and they supported me. So I then applied to the funding body, which is then called RERDIC, and they gave me an initial one-year project to look at the feasibility study of using biocontrol. So I did that, and the results looked pretty good. So then the RERDIC program manager asked me to put in and did another project. And meanwhile, the numbers of beetles started to build up in my hive, and I was using the beetles in my hive as a source of beetles for my research project. So it was, it was quite good. But it got very interesting because it was during the drought years, and the more I read about it, I thought, gee, we're in drought at the moment. When we get wet weather, we're going to be in serious trouble. And I started saying this to people, no one listened to me, but I was proven right because. But even at that stage, it was some funny things. I don't put a piece of linoleum on the top of my hive to stop bird comb.
What do you use?
I use what I call tabletop protective. Anybody goes to Spotlight, and us ladies probably all know Spotlight.
They're not those cloths that have got a checked pattern on one side and plastic, and then you turn them over and they've got
so I use the plain brown or the plain white. And the story behind that was...
And that's it's
focus.
Yeah, it's sort of like a cotton wool sort of looking.
And the story behind it was, I had learnt at this apiary day that you put something on the top to stop bird comb, which I used to have a lot of. So I went to a carpet place and said, could I have, do you have any offcuts of linoleum? And this man sitting there looking rather bored, so wanted to shooed me out of the shop. And I was like, oh, okay. So what?
So straight to Spotlight.
Spotlight was just down the road. I thought, all right, I know Spotlight. So I went down there and I bought some of this vinyl, this brown vinyl, which you'd normally put on a good polished table to protect it. So I bought some, but when I got back to my hives, I thought, well, it's a bit furry. I don't know whether bees are like that, so I'll fold it in half. So the furriness is on the inside. And I was putting that on my hives, and then I went down to the hives one day. I'd gone in because I knew I had a few beetles in the hive, and I wanted to try and collect some for my technician in my lab. We needed a couple more from the field. And I went down, I went to pull this mat off. And all of a sudden I realised there's all these beetles inside. And I thought, oh, great, I need this in my lab. So I quickly grabbed it out of the hive, rolled it up, put it in a plastic bag, took it back to the lab. And of course, when I went to open thinking I had all these beetles had run out, they weren't running out. And I realised, I put it underneath the microscope and realised they were stuck.
Inside that?
And what had happened was you realised that if you look under closely, if you magnify up the furriness on the back of that tabletop, it's all got these fibres looped over, all
Did the small hive beetle get caught up in that?
The beetle has got these funny legs with all these extensions, and so when it would run through, it'd get jagged in there, and the harder it would try to get out, the more it would run around. You could actually see it.
It matted itself in.
So I actually then tested it in the lab where I got some. I fluffed up one side to make it even fluffier. I put it in a big container.
How do you fluff it up?
Just with a wire brush or something. A brush.
So you want it quite fluffy before you halve it and put it on your hive? So can I do it? Can we do it?
Fluffing up makes it even easier.
So we just need to go to Spotlight and get some of this.
Except I think the quality back then is better than what you can get now. But even Aldi every now and then sell packages of tabletops in their Isle of Dreams. They sell that, and I've used that as well. So
this is good. This is good advice for us. So in comparison to the mat, with the hive beetle traps, that you fill with oil or diatomaceous earth or whatever. How do you find the girls respond to those traps?
Okay, I use everything because I'm in a very small hive beetle area. I use the fluffy mats because it stops the bird comb. And it traps beetles. But some of my hives are very good at propagating, so they propagate it up. But I put just pick up eucalypt sticks and put little sticks at the side to make it a bit more of a challenge. I also use those things, there's a whole range of them. I call them trench traps because they hang. And I prefer to use diatomaceous earth. It's a personal thing. Because I'm a bumble fingers, and if I put oil in, I'm liable to drop it into the hive, and it makes a mess.
What does the diatomaceous earth do to the hive beetle?
Well,
because they wouldn't drown.
No, they don't. But they go in and they rarely, because we tested that in the lab with diatomaceous earth. They rarely ever get out. And I don't know what it is, but we put other things like flowers and other, like corn flour and different things. They always got out. They don't get out with the diatomaceous earth. And we did some, I even looked at underneath the electron microscope because I got told, oh, it's cutting them up.
Yeah.
No, there's no cuts at all. Because diatomaceous earth is the silicon body of little things called radiolarians that lived hundreds of thousands of years ago. So it's the silicon. And the silica's often, some pieces are whole, some are broken up. And it was stuck all over the beetles, but there was no evidence of scratches or cuts.
So what do you think caused the death?
I think it's because silica, the diatomaceous earth is used to absorb oils. It also absorbs moisture out of the atmosphere. And we think when it sticks to the surface, it's absorbing a lot of oils. And the oils on insects help protect them and waterproof them.
Right.
So, because we found an effect, if we actually put them in these things in the lab in very, very high humidity, it was less effective as it was in lower. So that's indicating it's a water thing.
Okay.
So that's why we think it works.
So there's that. Now the third thing you're doing, which I'm particularly interested in hearing more about, is your traps.
Okay.
And you've got a recipe.
Okay, well the trap was our last research project. It was a big one. Because we were looking at certain types of odours that the insect found attractive. And we also know that insects see the world through odours. And that's how these beetles can find your hive, kilometres away. They're coming in on these, they only need a couple of molecules in the air, which we can't see, but they don't need much. And those fat little antennae they've got are very good at picking these things up. And we found that they're very attracted to that slime out, the odours and that. So we were investigating
the slime out that they create.
Yes, they actually carry yeast in their gut that creates that slime. It's a whole interesting ecosystem. It's almost like a whole conversation itself.
For another time. Okay.
Anyway, we found that there are certain odours, and we analysed those in the lab. We used fancy machines that go ping, or don't go ping, called gas chromatograph mass spec. We looked at the odours, we picked up certain ones, we tried to find combinations to create a synthetic lure. That's a work in progress. It takes years to get that one right. And we also tried a lot of different traps. We tried standard traps known in the, for insect trapping in other crops. Tried lots and lots of different things. We were trying all these synthetic lure mixes, they weren't working. It got to a stage where one of the technicians who'd worked with me for years reminded me of some work we'd done years ago where I created this funny little trap inside a mesh setting to do when I was doing some other research on small hive beetle. And so she and I started, well, the first thing she did was take a water bottle like this, cut the top off, invert it, and we put this, we actually went for a normal yeast mixture because we know that, well, as a mycologist, I know that when you put sugar and water with yeast, yeast is just a form of fungus that lives in liquid, and they ferment and they create a whole lot of odours, and those yeasty odours tend to be pretty common across a lot of different yeast species of fungi. So we just were trying that, and then the little bottle thing wasn't, it was a great way to start. We started trapping beetles all of a sudden with all these.
So do they actually drown? That's the purpose?
They were drowning in those,
in
the bottle.
In your liquid?
Yeah, they were drowning the liquid in that, but we were putting a lot in, it was bubbling up and it was drowning really well.
Okay.
And it was the first time we actually started trapping beetles in the field. More than one, only one, with all these other fancy traps, even stuff we'd found in the literature that other researchers have used overseas. We went to this great trouble with going to the plumbing shop and buying all these parts and building. Couldn't really trap anything with all these fancy chemical lures we were making in the lab. But we started using this, the technician's name was Kate. And anyway, then I also had some of those little fly traps from Bunnings at home, and I thought, oh, okay, try them here. Well, we're actually on our way. So then, but we did go back to the lab, and the other people in our team who were the chemists, we got the fermentation, they'd look at it certain number of days, they'd analyse the chemicals. So we actually knew what the chemicals were in it, the volatiles. So we actually did a bit of science behind it. And then we optimised it. And okay, the recipe that's in the video we made as part of our project, so people may have seen the video.
Which I can post it up again.
It's a beekeeper who did the acting for us. Phil Bowman is fantastic, he and his wife Teresa. We were using the apiary as one of our sites for testing and gathering all our data. So and then Phil kindly did the acting for us.
Yep.
Okay, so that's part of it. But that recipe...
Have you superseded that recipe, have you?
Yeah, because I've been trapping all season myself.
Yeah.
So even though the project was wrapped up and the report was written up and it's now available on the AgriFutures website, which you can download.
Yeah, yeah.
I have been trapping all season because it was only 3 years' work, and I know that the AgriFutures doesn't have money to do any more funded on that. Plus, now I sit on the panel, I won't be doing research. It's a conflict of interest, so I don't apply for funding in that area. So I thought I'd just make the trap up and I would just keep trapping. And I'm doing something I wasn't able to do in the project because I was travelling a lot with work. So I'm now doing every day, to every second day. My partner is my research assistant.
Yep.
So we have been putting the trap out because we want to see what triggers weather. We want to get the whole complete data.
Okay.
And we've trapped heading up to 6,000 beetles in one season only. And we've modified, I've just modified because I've actually found that the recipe online and in the book says 1 teaspoon of sugar, 1 teaspoon of yeast, 2 tablespoons of sugar, 1 tablespoon of honey, 1 cup of water.
Yeah.
In fact, it's 2 tablespoons of honey and 1 of sugar works better.
Okay.
And if you even went to 3 tablespoons of honey plus the yeast and 1 cup of water, would be even better. But
So
you're using a lot of honey, so that's where I compromise.
Okay, so I have to ask the question, will this recipe attract bees to this trap?
Look, you will get the odd one, particularly if the bees are really short of something.
Yes.
They will, because they'll home in on the especially when it's freshly out, if there's a bit of honey odour,
Yeah.
they'll go. But overall, I could tell you that the total number of bees I've caught this season, be flat at being 5.
Okay.
And I'm putting out 8 traps around my property because what we're finding is the distance, how I think it works is the hive is still a powerful attractor to beetles 5 kilometres away.
Okay.
So all those odours and the odours, so if we could put our little beetle glasses on to see the world they see it in odour, you'd see it's an incredibly complex number of all these odours coming from hives spreading out over kilometres, right?
Wow.
When we smell our honey, we're only our sense of smell is rubbish compared to bees and compared to insects.
Wow.
But so those odours are going out, and I think they're picking up on that. And the way that an insect, you actually have, and you've got a point that odours coming here. Imagine the odours goes out in a plume. Right?
Yes.
So believe the insects actually fly along a plume as the odours start to get stronger.
Yes.
So they'll fly out here, plumes here, odours weak here, so they'll turn back this way. And they'll keep flying across that plume until they get to where there's no more, and then they'll turn again.
And that's how they orientate.
That's how they orientate. And I
source.
believe that as they're heading into the hives, if we have these odours of these traps, then all of a sudden they get close and they pick up the trap, and it's like, oh, and then they go into that.
Very clever.
And then they get trapped. Now, some of the things I've found, I keep my traps fresh. Look, it's the same as a ginger beer plant.
Yeah.
Right? You just keep adding the sugar.
Oh.
So I keep adding a tablespoon of honey each day to keep it as fresh as. And then after about 4 or 5 days, depending on the weather, I replace it. So I'm replacing it about twice a week.
Okay.
It's a lot of work, but I tell you it's worth it when you've trapped, nearly 6,000 beetles in 5.5 months in one area.
So you're doing all this work yourself in your own apiary.
Yeah, just to.
So you could actually do with some more data support.
Well, I would find it interesting to hear from other people who are doing it, and people who've got time, who've got to do. It would be just interesting that what they're trapping, and if they're noticing. These little things I noticed in the project was, if it had been really, really dry for several weeks and we hadn't seen much beetle movement, and then you get about 10 mil of rain or more, I'd know that they don't fly in the rain.
Okay.
But then once the rain stopped, I'd find there'd be a real peak, like they were emerging.
Wow.
But this season has been interesting because we've been very hot and dry in Brisbane for a long time, and it's only been the last week our numbers have dropped down, but we had a wet October, and I think that was enough to start making them breed.
Okay.
There must have been slime outs in my area.
So do you think that a citizen science project
I think
would be helpful for you?
if people we could feed in. I mean, I don't know how you do it through the Facebook, but
Don't you worry about that. Don't worry about the logistics.
Great, because I don't know.
No, don't worry about
social media
logistics. I'm just looking and going, how can we support? And I'm wondering whether there's hobby beekeepers out there who are interested in supporting your research and you know, I bought one of those traps. Actually, I got mine from Aldi, and it cost me about $3 or $4.
That's what I should say. That the Aldi are a different colour, but I also bought the Aldi ones, and we even tested the different ones side by side.
Did you notice?
No, in case there's colour.
So it doesn't matter.
Didn't notice colour difference.
Okay, well that's something maybe that you and I can talk about further after this interview.
And I'm also hoping with that trap design, there's a young chap who's going to be doing his project year in his design studies at Queensland University of Technology this year. I need to get back onto him because he's a beekeeper. He works for a beekeeping supply place part-time. He's very keen on his design project being small hive beetle trap. So once he's back from holidays, I want to sit down with him and tell him what works really well with the trap, how I think we could modify it. So if he understands all that, then I think, who knows, we may have a more effective trap. Because there are a few little things. The beetles don't all die straight off. Some drown, and I think when it's fermenting, because I tend to try and put my odour out, you know, the new yeast down about mid-morning, so it's really bubbling away. Of course, this is dependent on temperature too. The higher the temperature, the less, you know, the yeast is going to slow down. If it's too cold, it doesn't bubble away as fast.
See, this is the other thing too. You know,
so
like this
would
be
a living thing.
And that would be interesting, like, you know, being based in Victoria in our cool weather, whether that would have an impact on...
Your traps may last a week, whereas in Queensland, the hot weather, they may not.
Okay.
But I think it's the odour being generated, bubbling out to come out. But in the first few days, you're not only getting the odour, you're getting carbon dioxide. And now, if you want to kill insects, you put them in carbon dioxide. Even if you want to quieten them down, when we work with them in the lab, we'll put carbon dioxide into their container to anaesthetize it. So I think you're getting some carbon dioxide being generated in that trap as well. And then ones that come over later, they're often sitting up in the lid. So and you'll see in the video, Phil takes it and he bashes the lid down and the beetles run everywhere. That's why. So you have to be mindful of that.
Interesting.
But and I'll try and do this for your Facebook. I've kept every beetle. I'm a scientist. Every beetle I've trapped in this season, just in case someone's saying, 6,000, don't believe you.
Prove it.
I'm actually putting them in a jar. I keep it in the freezer, and every morning I take it out of the freezer.
Love a photo of
add a
that
few
jar.
more, so I need to take a photograph of the jar to see what, you know, nearly 6,000 beetles looks like.
Where did small hive beetle come from?
Okay, Africa is a native of South Africa. We don't know how it got into the country. There's all sorts of wild theories and conspiracy theories, and all I can say is at this stage that's all they are. There's absolutely no proof, and I can't see that they ever can prove where it came from. It is a native. It's found in hives in sub-Saharan South Africa. It's not a major problem in their hives. It's known to be a problem in weak and stressed hives. It's almost like one of those things that helps clean up and take out weak and stressed hives. Surprisingly, also, if a hive is dying out of AFB, frequently people might think the beetle's taken out when the beetle only came in when it was on its last legs and taken out. So, but it also turned up in America in about 1996, 98. Did a lot of damage in the Florida area, but hasn't really. It's not going to go too far north because they have a really cold winter. So the cold winter slows it down. It doesn't like. That's why I thought mostly you should be safe down in Victoria, even though it's come down. However, nothing surprises me about that beetle. It's incredibly.
Does it adapt very quickly?
It's adaptive, it's incredibly resilient. Like if you're in an area where you do have very dry soil and really hot, like if you have a lot of your rain in winter and autumn and spring rather than summer, you're less likely to have a slime out, because the slime out happens when the entire hive turns to mush, a sticky, smelly, disgusting mush. That only seems to happen when you've got high humidity and you've had a bit of rain. That's normally because the yeast seems to need, the slime is all yeast, and it seems to need that high humidity.
Really?
And in fact, it's an interesting thing that if you think about the beetle lays eggs, the eggs hatch to these larvae or maggots, that's what we call it. The maggots will, and like any insect larva, they need a protein source to feed on. Like our babies need protein source. The protein in the hive are bee bread, the pollen, stored pollen, and the baby bees.
Really?
So if you have 3 boxes, you've only got that protein in the bottom box. But when those and the larvae work, somehow they bring that yeast on. It's a bit of a history of life.
Okay.
They bring the yeast on, and that yeast helps break down the wax and honey and the rest of the hive.
And is that what causes the slime out?
Yes, the slime is the yeast, but the larvae then can feed on the yeast. So that means they can keep breeding and breeding.
Okay.
So that means they can use 3 boxes of food reserve because that yeast is turning the rest of the box, the rest of the hive into something that the larvae can grow on. So pretty, I mean, nature's pretty amazing to think about. So
It is.
yeah, so that it turned up here, we became aware about 2002.
Okay.
And it somehow spread because we didn't have a very good biosecurity plan, and I'm probably working for government, but not saying.
But that's also something that biosecurity is also looking at.
Yeah.
You know, like
You know what? No one seems to care about it anymore. Everyone goes on about
yeah, more worried about
and that's
that.
the big thing. They've just accepted that it's endemic now.
Okay.
And it is, but it's still a major problem in certain areas. Like, you know, beekeepers up in certain parts of Queensland, and New South Wales, north of Sydney. It's never going to go away.
Okay.
And up in
What about those bottom boards? Because some of the beekeepers I know, they've got those bottom boards.
bottom board's excellent because
Yeah.
the beetle has to come in through the bottom of the hive. Anything inside the hive relies upon bees chasing them.
Yes.
And so if they've come in and they're trying to sneak in, and if the bees chase them, and they think they've got a little crevice to go down into, and then they go down into the crevice that's got diatomaceous earth or oil, then it's goodbye beetle.
Okay.
So they are very effective.
So we've got that.
Yep.
So as far as helping the girls inside the hive, we've got the bottom boards and we've got the trenches, as you call them, plus we've got your
The mat.
mat on the top, and then outside of the hive we've got your traps.
External trap.
Yeah, okay.
But there is a chemical that they allowed years ago when it first came called permethrin. I don't tend to recommend it because you have to know what you're doing. It's expensive, and if you treat badly, you could poison your hive. I've also heard of beekeepers using anything from lots of lime to pool chemicals to lawn chemicals or everything. Now,
are you talking about outside
treating
around
outside,
there? And what sort of radius are you talking that would need to be treated if you were going to be using some sort of
if you've got good soil around the hive, you only probably out a metre or so, because the larvae come out of the hive when they're big and fat and full.
Yeah.
We call wandering stage. They come out, they drop down into the soil, and they'll find somewhere to pupate. Now, research overseas has said they can crawl up to 200 metres to find somewhere.
Wow.
So
what's their ideal environment that they like
love?
to?
Nice, soft, easy, loamy soil to get down to. That's got a certain amount of moisture. You know, you've got a lot of that at the Mornington Peninsula.
Yes.
In the right climate. So bad luck. Sorry about that.
Nice and moist. Yes.
Yeah. But if you've got really dry soils, they dry out in. They really need some moisture in the soil. They will dry out. But yeah, so they can so they have to drop down outside the hive. And I mean, my original project, the whole thing about my original work was I looked at fungus inside, and of course found that's an issue because it can kill the bees. There's no way of treating inside the hive without affecting the bees, because you put fungus in there, the bees are so hygienic and clean, they clean it up. They actually, I found that there is a very good, I have a fungus that when I put it in the soil, it was really good at putting poison in disease in the larvae and killing a lot of them. But that, I think, still needs a little bit of work, but I'd love to see that taken to be commercialised and be available for beekeepers. And you know, maybe in the next year or two, who knows what we might be able to have done. And on that note, I will also say, chickens. Chickens are great. They scratch around and they'll find those pupae. And believe it or not, in Queensland, I've finally found a use for cane toads, because they sit outside the hives, and yes, they eat bees, the bees hang down, but we put hives on stands in Queensland because of toads. Toads, if the larvae come out, they're ready to get them. They eat them. And
so does that justify us allowed coming to Australia.
No.
It's more hive beetle management.
I find it interesting because look, did I take my work home with me, or did my work evolve because of what I have? But I've actually lost quite a few hives from small hive beetle. I've had, in fact, my real advancement in looking at the yeast was when, after one Christmas period, I went up towards my hives. I live on acreage, and my hives about 50 metres from the house, and I was walking up there, and I could smell this about 20 metres, and I thought, oh no, I know what's happening. And yeah, it was disgusting. And I even have lost 3 hives in the last year, believe it or not.
Wow.
Because when I stopped the project, I was so busy writing it up, I didn't have time to trap beetles, I didn't have time to do the inside. So last Easter, and then we had a late lot of the beetle numbers build up. And about Easter, I lost 2 hives. But again, I just didn't have time to do the hive work, because writing project reports up is just a major. It's just, you know, and I was trying.
Everything goes out the window?
Well, I really, you know, I was just trying not to. I was really wanting to get in on time, and it's a massive amount of work on top of your other work as a scientist. So let the hives go, and then I lost one just before Christmas, because that hive had actually gone queen missing by a week, but I hadn't gone down to the breed box, one of my checks, to actually realise that, and I just got it.
Wow.
So I didn't get all the frames, I actually got a couple, but yeah.
Wow, this
So
has been
I've learned a lot.
Wow, this
by
has been
having
so
lost
interesting. Thank you,
Pleasure.
Diana. Oh, this has been great, and I'm sure people are going to have lots of questions.
Yeah, and if anybody can,
you know.
you get out there and have a go at this, because
Yes.
by managing the beetle, and I said, I still don't know. There's a lot we don't know. People keep saying, oh, they must be breeding somewhere outside of hives. I don't know, because when somebody brings me a larva that they found in a compost bin, I'll say, yep, maybe we've got them. But people may see the beetle in the bin, compost bin or whatever, but there are other beetles that look similar.
Yes.
But you need to put it underneath a microscope to actually know the difference. But the other thing is, the beetle is attracted to those fermentation areas.
Yes.
So they could be attracted there, but are they breeding there? I don't know. We do think
You need more funding to do more research,
yes,
don't you?
but I know AgriFutures probably has a few
Well,
other things which are their
I
priority
know,
list
but
right
that's
now.
not to say funding can't come from other places.
That would be fantastic.
Yeah,
but,
and you never know. Anyway, we need to wind this up
Yep.
because you need to get back to this conference. And thank you so much for your time. It's been an
Pleasure.
absolute pleasure having you, and thank you for coming. And
It's been great. Great opportunity. Thank you so much.
yes, you're welcome. Thanks, Doc.
Thank you.